Thank you for tuning in to the SheRo Game Podcast.
I am Sheila, the She and SheRo.
And I am Rona Renee, the Ro and SheRo. And today we're going to talk about dealing with confrontations.
Yes.
Ooh.
Happy. So for me, and we talk about this all the time, Rona, I like to just be direct to the point and just put it all out there.
So let's stipulate the differences between dealing with them.
Okay.
Right. So like Sheila mentioned, she's more assertive. Then you have people that are more passive. I'm not passive. I'm assertive like her. But we'll still get varying perspectives on both.
And then there's also aggressive. So,
yes.
Assertive sometimes, if you're not careful, can be aggressive or come off as aggressive to the person you're talking to. So we have to kind of be careful and mindful of that. So we'll explore, I think, all three of those to a certain extent. So going back, I am assertive. At least I like to be. I like to just put it all on the table. I don't like to sugarcoat things. I don't like to sweep things under the rug. I don't like to make assumptions. And I definitely don't like or respect the passive aggressive thing. I just don't. It's like my favorite friends are the ones who just give it to me straight and tell me like it is. I'd rather take that initial okay, that was hard to palate, but I have the truth than for you to spoon feed me sugar and then 10 pounds later, I'm like, why did you do that? You know what I mean? I don't need no more pounds. So I think it's important when we talk about confrontation, we got to kind of start that conversation just talking about communication in general, right? Mm-hmm. So healthy relationships, no matter what type of relationship, whether it's a friendship, a colleague at work, a romantic relationship, family members, being able to communicate openly and honestly with the person is pivotal to having a good relationship with the person.
It is. I think that's the foundation of having communication. The objective is not to always agree, but it's to maybe
understand,
even agree to disagree, but just to understand each other's position, why they feel that way. And then that helps you get to know a person. One of my uncles says, if you ever try to make somebody something that they're not, you'll never know them. Don't let that go over your head. Yeah.
That's a good one.
So it's one of those things I can't respond to you in a way that I want to respond to you and expect you to respond accordingly based on the wills or the whims that I want to impose upon you. But more importantly, just taking the information in for what it is and really understanding what it is and then governing yourself accordingly.
Absolutely. So let's talk about when we have certain hard, uncomfortable conversations we need to have with somebody. I know sometimes that's difficult for people to navigate. So a normally assertive person sometimes shies away from those uncomfortable conversations when you're having to communicate to someone, I don't like this, or this is not okay, or communicating a boundary to say you did this a couple of times. It's a trigger for me. Please stop, whatever it is. How do you navigate when you're having to have those kind of conversations?
I think it goes back to what we said in a different episode where you have to really be fluid and authentic in how you feel. And once you've discovered how you feel about something and how to articulate that, I think you just need to articulate the facts, which is you did this, it did this to me, and this is how it made me feel. And then give that person a chance to reflect on that, maybe understand what it is that they're doing, because sometimes people aren't aware of their behavior. So we have to lend ourselves to giving them grace with that, because sometimes people are just moving based on what they know and what they've been working from all their lives.
Absolutely.
And so that's where the grace comes in. Again, the boundary has to be there, but you still allow space for a person to be human. I think that's fair. I think that having the conversation, and even if it doesn't go the way that you want, you still have knowledge on how to deal with this person now. So sometimes you may have to build a thicker boundary line. You might have to create more space. You may have to limit the access that person has to you. And so the confrontation is not to be, if we want to talk about being aggressive, it's not to beat you down. It's not to insult you. It's not to just get all up in your face and try to be threatening or intimidating and things like that. And I know some people that take that approach too. And it's just okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it that way. So I apologize that it made you feel that way. And a lot of times people who are always aggressive just are poor communicators, because I think that it doesn't take aggression to communicate well. You don't have to do that unless you're defending yourself in a physical manner and you don't want it to get physical. So then you have to be aggressive in your speech. But I don't think the first reaction should be aggressive. I think it needs to be, you're at a level ground and you can be assertive, explain what it is that's happening, what's going on, and how it's making you feel. And then try to come to a resolution with the person or some type of agreement. Come to an agreement. Like, when you do this, it makes you feel this way. Okay, I won't do that because I don't want you to feel that way. Or if a person is not willing to be accountable, it's a whole other topic, guys. That's a whole other topic. If they don't want to be accountable for those things, then it's like, okay, so we're going to agree to disagree because you're not understanding what it is that I'm explaining to you. And because of that, I'm going to react in this manner. And you have no choice but to abide by that and respect that, because you have now made this to where you're going to do what's best for you and I'm going to do what's best for me. We haven't come to a compromise.
Right. And you won't always come to a compromise. I think one of the things my father always said, and I'm going to probably misquote this, but I'll do the best I can. Understanding is one of the greatest things in the world. So just having an understanding. You may not always agree or empathize with a person. You may say, I get what you're saying, but that made no sense still to me, that you chose to operate in that manner. But just having that understanding is very important for any sort of a relationship to be healthy. But I'm going to say, as far as being aggressive, I don't think any situation ever actually calls for you to be aggressive. I think aggression comes from an emotional place. So it's like, no matter what someone else is doing, and that almost goes back to like protecting peace, it's like you don't have to respond with that same energy or match that energy, so to speak. You can keep your homeostasis where you're like, this is what it is and this is what it's going to be. Now you can continue to be assertive and say this is what it is and what it's not going to be, but at some point it is cut off the access. I'm not going to engage in this conversation with you anymore if you're going to be that way. I'm not going to match that energy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if I'm ready to say when they go low, we go high. Because you go low, I'm out. I'm just going to leave. Yeah. Like, I'm not coming down there with you, but I'm not even going to give you access to my energy.
But I think it depends on the situation. I mean, like, as far as being aggressive, I mean when there's a physical altercation that might be, on the verge of happening. To where, like, sometimes you have to protect yourself. Somebody might be trying to rob you. You know what I mean? Somebody may run up on you and try to harm you and assault you.
Well, yeah.
So that's where I was basically leaning myself
to.
And even then, sometimes you may be able to talk the person down and out of the situation to where they kind of come down and they really understand what's happening, because sometimes it's not always personal. But that's a whole nother shift that we won't get into. But that's what I was saying.
Yeah. I get that. Sometimes it's time to nuck if you buck, whatever. Like they come at you wrong and you got to be ready. Yeah. But yeah, so I was more so thinking about just in a space of maintaining healthy relationships with people. It's like once you have somebody who you're trying to have a relationship with and they insist on being aggressive, it's usually, in my opinion, it's better to maintain your assertiveness and or exit stage left. Like, just don't even expose yourself to that sort of energy.
So I kind of want to also go into, how you deal with confrontation, how that can help build your character and allow you to have elevation in that relationship in this space. At least that should kind of be a goal. So usually, obviously, confrontation comes from when problems arise and you have issues or you have a misunderstanding. And so we go back to communication. So now we're communicating in a way to where we have to clear or dispel whatever is going on or whatever issue is at hand. And hopefully, once we come to an agreement, whether it's to agree to disagree or to come to some kind of compromise, when I say agreement, I'm not saying like you guys are both agreeing to the same thing, but you agree to something.
Right.
Even if it's individually. When you come to that type of agreement, the elevation of the relationship should be better. It should go higher. It should be a stronger bond because now you have a better understanding of who you're dealing with and the things that affect them and how they affect them, and vice versa. And so it creates a stronger bonding relationship, in my opinion, which, comes from the basis of having strong communication.
Agree. I think it's somebody said this one wasn't my father. Something along the lines of, you don't really know a person until you've been through something with that person, and or been able to observe them when they're dealing with something, major grief, major loss, right. Something that would normally trigger a severe emotional reaction, and you see how they deal with that. So having conflicts in relationships is important to building stronger, healthier relationships, in my opinion. So how you deal with those, and then even how you grow, because maybe that first conflict, it is a drag out argument and you're yelling to the top of your lungs, and it's like, but when you can sit down and say, you know what, we shouldn't have done this was unnecessary, how do we move forward and not allow this to happen, and you build and become better communicators with one another through that conflict. So I agree, it's important. It's anytime you have people with different personalities and different upbringings and different experiences come together, there's going to be some level of conflicts that occur. There's going to be different perspectives. I felt like we should have did this way, or you should have did this way, but this is how you chose to do it. And so having that understanding of why that person chose to act in that way helps you understand, was this something that came from a place of what I would look at as bad character, or was this circumstantial? Was this because of that person's unique journey and experiences that made them react in this way? And then it's like, oh, okay. So that was just, I understand why you would have done that. So I think it serves as a basis for growing, not just within that relationship, but as an individual.
Very true.
Yeah, I think you definitely learn more about who you are and how you deal with conflict when you're faced with it.
And I think also being able to decipher when to pick your battles, because I know a lot of people say that. Mm-hmm. That's something I grew up hearing all the time. Mm-hmm. Pick your battles. You don't have to, and I get it. And I think that statement or that mantra holds a lot of weight, because sometimes you don't even have to exert your energy into something if you kind of already understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. You don't have to address it.
Yeah.
Okay, I already know what's happening here. She had a bad day, or you know somebody in their family passed and they've been short lately. Mm-hmm. So don't even bring it to them, because you already know that's it's stemming from something that happened to them, or something that you're already privy of. But I also think that people will only do what you allow.
Agree.
So I think that kind of ties into picking your battles, because you also get to a place where you understand that, okay, this boundary, and this word keeps coming up, this boundary is here, and I'm not going to allow anybody to treat me any type of way or do anything to me. And so you pick your battles that way too, because you've already set the stage and the floor for the things that you may or may not welcome to be inflicted upon you or allowed in your space.
Agree. And I think also it kind of comes back to, just like you mentioned before, just allowing people to be human. Sometimes people, they may irrationally be in a bad mood, and you don't always have to address it. You know what I mean? Like, just give them their space and let them be in their mood, as long as it's not carrying on for too long.
Exactly.
Just, have your space, do what you need to do to reground yourself. And I'm going to just give you the space and the grace to be human.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think finding the best form of communication always is going to be, the best approach.
Absolutely.
And it's going to depend on who you're dealing with. You may be dealing with a parent. You may be dealing with a sibling. You may be dealing with somebody who has a significant age difference than you. So their mindset is different.
Yes.
We talked about, before, where our parents' generation, they're very rigid and inflexible with their thinking. And they're
very traditional.
From what they consider to be traditional. You know what I'm saying? Because they got it from somewhere, but that's not the things that we also adapt. We, in this new age and in our generation, we've adapted other things that have become traditional for us.
That's a good
So I think it's just relative to the era you grew up in and how the world and society was functioning at that time.
That makes sense.
And so I think finding the best form of communication with that person allows you to understand, do I deal with this person with a short handle spoon or a long handle spoon? How do I deal with them? What are the boundaries that I place on them? What are the things that I have to do or maneuver, or how do I govern myself accordingly? How do I respond to them? Do I respond to them at all? You know, again, going back to protecting your peace.
Yeah.
What is it that, is this worth me involving myself into, and how deep, how long, and how often do I go into this before it turns into something else? You know, because sometimes you're constantly finding yourself having confrontations with people when really the relationship is just toxic.
Yeah.
And you just need to cut ties.
True.
It doesn't have to be any rocket science to it. It's, I'm tired of having this conversation with you. I'm tired of rehashing the same thing with you. So guess what? You go your way, I'm going to go mine. Even if that means I have to love you from afar because I have a biological relationship to you, or I have some other type of tie to you. Again, I have to protect my peace. And I hope that you find peace in whatever it is that you're doing too.
Yeah, so that brings up something that I think is maybe not as easy to navigate. So we have those relationships that we choose, our friends, our significant others, but then we have those relationships that God gave us. We have parents, we have siblings, we've got cousins, baby. We got
Cousin Junebug, Uncle Earl.
Yeah, so it's like there's certain people who you can't just cut ties with. In my opinion, you can't just cut ties with. Some people may feel different. I heard about a few people cutting off their own mama. Nah, my mama gave me birth. She don't get cut off.
Yeah.
But I still need to protect my peace, so I'll have to navigate those relationships differently because my I'm gonna call it desire. I won't call it ability because of course I could cut my mother off if I wanted to, but I would never want to do that. She's invested everything she's had in me, and just because she may have some, you know, things and behaviors or something that I may not want to deal with at a certain time doesn't mean I cut her off.
Yeah.
But I will establish boundaries with any relationships, no matter who they are, and just deal with certain people accordingly. But what do you think about those familial relationships that we don't really choose, but they're there? And
so for me, if I'm gonna be completely honest, the love is never lost.
Of course,
I may compartmentalize it. I may put it in a pocket and tuck it away and always carry it with me, but I never take it out. And that's just a form of the defense mechanism that I have for myself, based on my history, my trauma, my experiences. But I think that it could get to a point to where that's almost where it's at, because there's no communication. And after a while of no communication, you start to not really know a person after a while, especially if they're constantly evolving. Now, sometimes that's not the case. Some people are just stuck in their ways and they're going to be who they're going to be. But usually, if you have one person evolving and one person being stuck, they're probably not going to see eye to eye. At some point, one person is going to succumb to the other one's plight. And then there might be some kind of reconciliation. But sometimes people just don't want to do it for the sake of saying that they're being wrong. And we'll talk about that in our accountability piece.
We will. We'll save that for another episode.
But, you know, it's so many different, I don't know if caveats is the right word, but different scenarios and different, you know, details of how that can go or how to even attack and navigate that. But I think, you know, people figure it out as they go along in their experiences, you know, in their growth.
Yeah. So to sort of wrap up, I think conflict is inevitable. Whenever you have more than one person involved, there's going to be conflict. Some people have conflicts within themselves. That's a whole nother topic. But there's always going to be some sort of conflict. So it's all about navigating that in a healthy way. Being clear and assertive in your communication. I think being passive can be unhealthy in a lot of ways, but also can be aggressive. So too much or too little of anything. You want to have like a balance. So with that, what's your game piece for today, Ro?
My game piece for confrontation, I think, would be just find the best form of communication with who you're dealing with. You know, really analyze that and really focus on how to get to some kind of resolve that you're okay with and that leaves you with the most peace that you can have, considering all things that may, you know, pertain to that circumstance.
So my game piece is going to be address it head on. Don't shy away from those necessary but sometimes uncomfortable conversations. But just make sure you're being empathetic in the way you communicate. So with that, I am Sheila, the She and SheRo.
And I am Ro and Renee, the Ro and SheRo. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
All right, we're out.